Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Horror Corner with Jess Starling. I'm Jess, and today we're going to be talking about and taking a deep dive into my new favorite subgenre of horror. It is a subgenre of actually crime thriller that is closely related to the American horror genre that greatly influenced the American horror genre, known as Giallo. Which is Italian. For those of you who are new to the channel and maybe new to horror, another one of my favorite subgenres is the American slasher. Giallo is sometimes called Italian slashers, so that's how I differentiate between the two. But I am obsessed with practical gore effects, and the socio-political commentary surrounding violence. Giallo as a genre also uses POV shots. That's a part of it that I really enjoy as well, and black gloved killers, so you can't see any details about the killer. The gloves, always wearing a jacket, hat, can't see them, and it's from their point of view. So that the amazing practical effects, I can't emphasize enough, if you are a fan of practical gore effects in horror, Giallo is the genre you really need to be looking into. Because of the POV shots that are sort of standard in the genre, it allows them to put more focus on the gore effects without sacrificing being able to hide the killer's identity. So if that's what you like, this is the perfect genre to really get into those kinds of things. Giallo in Italian literally means yellow, and it gets its inspiration from the yellow-covered pulp crime mystery novels of the 60s and 70s that were called Giallo Mondadori. If we're being honest, I don't think that I would find the novelized versions of this kind of thing very interesting. And I'll talk a little bit later, but I think it's the horror elements that make Giallo interesting. I don't think it would have been as interesting without those elements woven in. So there's three, but two for our intents and purposes for this episode. Giallo, or directors who are known as the grandfathers of Giallo, Mario Bava being one of them. He sort of kickstarted this subgenre in 1963 with his take on Alfred Hitchcock's The Man Who Knew Too Much, but Mario Bava's version was called The Girl Who Knew Too Much. Mario Bava and Dario Argento both were heavily influenced by Hitchcock, and at some point in their careers have both been referred to as the Italian Hitchcock. If we're being honest, I think I find Giallo to be superior to anything that was being made in America in the 60s and 70s. The thing about Italy is that they never asked permission to proudly revel in the gore and sexuality. That, here in America, the MPAA would be cracking down on that shit well into the 90s. And even today, it still, certain franchises have a hard time getting their gore accepted by the MPAA. So every time I open my mouth about John Carpenter and Halloween, it gets me like massive amounts of hate and vitriol from film bros. Let me reiterate, okay? I love John Carpenter. And I really like Halloween, okay? I really like Halloween, the original and the original sequel. But as much as I love and appreciate what John Carpenter and Halloween did for horror in America, the fact that people refer to Halloween as the first slasher, and they say that they call Jamie Lee Curtis the original Scream Queen or the original Final Girl, and I'm like, that is Daria Nicolodi slander that I will not stand for, because she was doing the Scream Queen Final Girl thing alongside her husband at the time. She was married to Dario Argento. She is Aja Argento's mother. And I really, it's laughable that Halloween was considered the first when, this Italian subgenre was in its golden age by the time 1978 rolled. I mean, if we're being honest, Giallo was already pretty much on the way out by the time Halloween rolled around. So, technically speaking, Giallo is actually kind of difficult to classify. There's disagreement amongst, a lot of filmmakers about what makes a film Giallo, but there are some elements that are constant throughout. So the typical Giallo plot, like I said before, involves the black-gloved killer who stalks and butchers a series of beautiful women. Really cut and dry, right? Many, especially the works of Dario Argento, anything he's involved in contains some supernatural elements. Suspiria, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into Suspiria, and Phenomenon. I want to watch Phenomenon. That's Jennifer Connelly. She realizes she has a psychic connection to insects. And then I'm going to do a deep dive into Tenebrae separate from this, in the hopes that, if you're interested in seeing the movies, that you'll be able to watch this, get your intro, and then we'll watch the movies and break them down together. So that'll be coming. Giallo protagonists are, generally speaking, outsiders, as in foreigners. Usually it's either English or American people traveling to Italy. Travelers, tourists, and it's usually a man and a woman. The man is the tourist who meets up with the Italian woman, and they're alone in, it's a foreign environment. The man is usually the main protagonist. They're usually witness to the first murder in what ends up being the string of murders, and that's why the killer ends up targeting them, because they were seen witnessing the crime. And like I was saying about weaving horror elements in with the murder mystery, that's why I like this subgenre so much, because the murder mysteries are really compelling. But then when you add in the horror element, to me, that makes it even more compelling. because it just really deftly weaves in those elements of the violence, the gore, the overt sexuality of the horror genre. And when you combine that stuff with, you know, these trademarks of Italian cinema, the, you know, the sweeping cinematography, the color, the use of color, the thing that I loved the most about Tenebrae wasn't the story, it wasn't even the blood spray and splatter in the Tenebrae is absolutely mind-blowing. It's so amazing. It's awesome. But what impressed me the most about Tenebrae wasn't the gore effects. As a matter of fact, it was the cinematography and the music. Goblin does a lot of the music, does, I think, all of the music, if not, I mean, most of the music, if not all of it, for Dario Argento's movies. And it is, I just, one of the points of Giallo, one of the overarching themes that is found in most typical Giallo is that of isolation and alienation, and just the way that the cinematography and the score like go together is just, I finally got to watch Deep Red, which really drives home this idea of this big place, this larger than life foreign land that makes us feel microscopic and helpless by comparison. That feeling that's, you know, that the reason why Giallo became so popular was because Italian citizens, you know, in the 60s and early 70s felt the same way, you know, alienated, you know, etc. And then I also mentioned Argento's use of color. It's amazing how he's able to use color in a way that grabs your attention without being too unrealistic. Like in Deep Red, they actually don't use red for the blood. The fake blood is pigmented like this sort of magenta pinkish color, and it absolutely is not realistic, but that doesn't take you out of the story, which, you know, it's a really fine line, and a lot of directors don't know or can't use color the way that he can, and I just absolutely love it because it forces you to look. Right? Like, Giallo doesn't rely on the shadows or jump cuts or editing techniques to protect the viewer from the brunt of the violence, right? In fact, you know, when you're looking at from the POV of the killer, right, that pretty much essentially demands that you have close-ups on the gore shots. And yeah, I just happy autistic noises, flappy hands. That's how much I love Giallo. And now that I know more about the history and the influence on American slashers, the first Halloween plays like a Giallo with two babysitters taking the place of the world-weary, isolated protagonists of you know, like movies like Tenebrae and Deep Red. Like, it's pretty clear that what John Carpenter did was take the Giallo format and then make it palatable to an American audience and make it understandable and relatable to an American audience. And that is, you know, is John Carpenter's contribution, was being able to take the same format but alter it in a way that it was more interesting to contemporary American youth. And at that time, those kinds of novels series weren't popular in the US. So a slow burn whodunit punctuated with a few scenes of gore here and there just wasn't gonna cut it for American youth. So if you think about it, even though he was very clearly taking from the Giallo tradition, that he did contribute his own mark on the genre. The thing that I will say that Carpenter did better with Halloween was that they kept Michael Myers masked, right? Like, they never reveal his identity. Like, even when they say that he's, supposedly Laurie's brother, they don't ever, in the original series, they didn't ever give him a backstory, and they didn't really ever give him a face. And if I, am thinking back on these, the Giallo that I've seen so far, it's definitely, they'd be scarier, more disturbing and unsettling if they never did unmask the killer eventually at the end. Because in Giallo, the killer, generally speaking, does have a relationship to one or both of the protagonists in the end. Whether it was, having seen them before, met them before, whatever. So in that way, it's, it plays a lot like Scream. If the Scream kills were done POV. Which I think is kind of what Wes Craven was trying to go for with the character, I'm bad with character names because I prosopagnosia. But the kid in Scream 4 who was doing the live streaming. I feel like that's kind of what they were going for as far as the meta aspect of Scream 4. One thing I noticed about Deep Red also was that, with Goblin doing the whole score, it really did feel like the music was supposed to be like its own separate character, almost like a separate entity entirely. Like American audiences, right? You've come to expect the kind of musical cues that, precede a jump scare, or, music that, might telegraph how tense it's supposed to be or how somber it's supposed to be. But the music in Deep Red is like, they'll play like an upbeat song, or like a song that kind of makes you want to go like that while they're discovering a dead body, or somebody's like wailing over somebody dying, and it's like, it does a really good job of leaving you feel off balance and never letting you regain your footing. Like, it's uncomfortable and weird throughout the whole movie. And so between that and just how bright it is, and how, all this violence happens pretty much in broad daylight, it really, I was deeply unsettled by Deep Red. Like, it deeply, deeply disturbed me. And I haven't been unsettled by a horror movie like that in a very, very long time. So I was very excited about that. So that is my brief 20 minutes. Thanks for sticking with me. My brief introduction to Giallo, a sub-genre of horror related to the American slasher. So, in, I don't want to say the next episode, but in a next episode, because I think the next episode is going to be on analog horror. And then, of course, once I get a chance to watch tonight's episode of Chucky, I'm going to be recording. I've been waiting to watch tonight's episode to finish my script for Chucky, because I want to do a deep dive into that franchise and why I love that psychotic 2-foot-tall killer doll so freaking much. I also want to make sure that I go back and share my critique of Tucker and Dale versus Evil and ableism in the horror genre. I don't think enough people are really talking about the future of horror, and I think the only person I've ever heard talk about the future of horror is Megan J. Stoops on TikTok and Instagram. She has a podcast with Straw Hat Goofy, but I would just recommend going and listening to her content. And she's really the only one who's really having these discussions, but I think specifically the movie Tucker and Dale versus Evil has some key discussions that need to happen, that are related to that movie, and to this idea of, how do we progressively propel horror forward? How do we not rely on continuing to other vulnerable and marginalized communities while still scaring the pants off the normies, so to speak. So please make sure that you are getting subscribed. I still don't have a very good routine. I'm recording this. I just got home from work. And I'm hoping to get at least 2 more episodes recorded tonight. But if I don't, like I said, I don't know. And who knows how long it's going to take to edit and whatever. So please, I appreciate you sticking with me in the meantime. But if you subscribe and hit the notification bell, it'll let you know every time I upload. That way you can make sure you don't miss it when it does upload. I'm working so freaking hard, and it's also National Novel Writing Month now. So I'm working really hard on my script writing, to keep up too. So yeah, I'm getting there on all these episodes that I've been promising. I hope you've heard something compelling or interesting about Giallo that makes you want to enjoy the genre as much as I have. But yeah, I really want to make sure I get these episodes out so I can partake of my favorite holiday activity, which is seeing how many times I can stream the original Black Christmas between November 1st and Christmas. It's absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time, and if you haven't seen it, I'm pretty sure it's streaming on Shudder, but the original is also available on Amazon. It has Olivia Hussey. I think it's Olivia. Yeah, no. Margot Kidder? Very young Margot Kidder, I think. I don't know. But I also plan on doing a Christmas deep dive into that movie, in addition to Silent Night. The Silent Night series. Yes, at least the first 2. So, again, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure that you are clicking that notification bell so that you don't miss. I'm also going to do another episode in my Late Diagnosed and Learning series. This one on object constancy, which is sort of tangentially related to context blindness. If you are interested in the context blindness video that I just recently uploaded, this will be a good follow-up to that. So thank you for coming by for a look at the history of another horror genre. I will see you in the next episode.